Welcome to Democratic Television, a program of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party that brings insights, perspectives, and attitudes of our always thoughtful Democratic guests. Our focus today is on the County Board of Supervisors, and our guest is Susan Ellenberg, a trustee in the San Jose Unified School District and a candidate for Santa Clara County Supervisor District Number 4. Susan, welcome to DTV.
Thanks so much for having me, Bill.
It's a delight to have you. Well, we often start our interviews, especially with public office holders and candidates, with questions about your background, because it's often interesting to our viewers to hear what about your personal background and your life before entering politics sort of informed you in making a decision to enter political life.
Thinking way back, really, to my childhood, there are a couple of really significant influential factors. The first is that I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is clearly the Midwest part of the state. A lot of food in cans, not a lot of produce. But I grew up in the same city as all four of my grandparents and was really fortunate to have close relationships with them and learned a tremendous amount about the world through them. Both of my grandfathers were self-educated. My paternal grandfather, my Papa Joe, was an electrician and very active in his union at GE, was the secretary, and was very much an advocate for workers' rights. And he talked with me a lot about that growing up, and it wasn't until I was a teenager that I heard kind of the real backstory. He had been called before the McCarthy Commission,
Wow.
suspected of being a communist when he really was only a socialist,
Right.
and lost his job at General Electric. And it turned out that what was behind a lot of the McCarthy hearings was not only the communist aspect, but a lot of anti-Semitism. He was Jewish. He actually changed his name when he left General Electric because he felt that that was a significant detriment. And I grew up thinking that I never wanted my religion to be something to be ashamed of or a negative piece of my life. That was an important lesson from him. He also taught me how to fix a lot of things, how to fix cars, how to build light board circuits. We made lots of metal paperweights, not particularly useful, but gaining an early confidence with my hands, with things that I could do and build, were really significant to me.
He would have had to have done all of that without the benefit of modern tinker boxes and kits that kids can use.
This is true. His entire shop was a kit where I spent a lot of time with him. So from my Papa Joe, I really think about my values of workers, of pride in my identity, and the confidence to be able to be self-sufficient.
I don't want to ask you anything that would be maybe too personal,
Sure.
but it strikes me that that experience of your grandfather in terms of the anti-Semitism that was involved in the way that he was treated during that era, are there any parallels, do you think, or does that inform what younger people today who didn't live through that era might respond to the current political environment in the country, which I think is very divided, and many of us feel there's racism and misogyny and all of these bad human feelings and traits underneath and behind some of these things?
Yeah, in some ways I think Trump has united people in that he has found, and his ilk has found something to hate and fear in almost everyone.
Right.
Whether it's your religion, your ethnicity, your race, your income level, your sexual orientation, your gender identity. What he has done has create, I think, a unity amongst all of us because everyone has something that can be defined as a vulnerability.
Right.
And how we choose to address that by embracing or hiding it, I think is a very personal choice because these are really characteristics that are closest to our heart and core identities.
Right. I think you're right in the sense that the hate-inspired political movements and actions, they do seem to be about dividing and about carving out somebody and making them the other and scapegoating them. And I think that it's you're exactly right that sticking together is the way to.
If you divide enough
that.
people, that essentially becomes our commonality.
Yes.
We really, it's very hard to find people that don't feel marginalized in some way, and I think using that as a piece of strength and an element of unity is much more powerful.
Yeah, wonderful. You mentioned your other grandfather's influence as well.
Yes, he was essentially a peddler. He had stocks of umbrellas and gloves and cowboy hats in his car that he would take from city to city. And there wasn't a lot of professional advice from him, but he was the least judgmental person I had ever met. He exuded kindness, acceptance, just absolute joy in life, and he experienced a tremendous number of hardships, lost his wife very young, lost one of his daughters, really had a lot of struggles, but was endlessly positive. And the reinforcement that he gave to me in supporting absolutely everything I did, being fascinated by everything I had to say, it was an unconditional love that was also incredibly strengthening to me.
Sounds like a very positive spirit.
Yeah.
It's interesting you referred to him as a peddler. I think by that you imply that he was scrappy and hardworking, and Silicon Valley we call it an entrepreneur.
That's true. That's true. But yes, the peddler, I think of the old-time peddlers as pushing their carts around. He had a car, but he literally had all of his business in his car, and he schlepped his things. And yeah, peddler is. I don't know what he called. I think he probably just called himself a salesman or a traveling salesman.
Right.
We occasionally got the bounty of unsold samples from him, but was a nice balance for me was that where I had these two incredible men in my lives who were very influential, I also had the privilege of attending a girls' school.
Ah, you did.
And
so that explains some things for me, Susan.
It does?
You just mentioned two men from an earlier generation as being strong influences, and yet I know that you're a leader in women's issues in the area, and so tell me about that. How did that come about, and which school was it? What was your experience there?
It was a high school in Pittsburgh that was all girls, and then I continued on to Barnard College in New York, and there is an air in girls' schools, and maybe it's true for boys' schools as well. Having not had the experience, I can't speak to that. But that again gives you both the intellectual tools and the confidence to speak your mind, to know that your opinions have value, to believe that you can make contributions to the world in any way that you like. There is not a sense of competition. I think a lot of the social dynamics that happen in middle school and high school are very much a part of, it's
being in a mixed gender environment,
the mixed gender environment, and there are tremendous values to that as well. None of my kids went to single gender schools, but I think
I wonder, do you feel it's different now? I mean, those experiences, and one would hope that all kids would have that, where their limits are only to their effort and ability. And do you think girls in school these days and young women have a better environment than you might have if you hadn't been in such a positive school?
Right now, girls are outperforming boys. In public schools, they are graduating from college at higher rates. Interestingly, they are not. They're not entering the same fields at the same rates. Women are still underrepresented in many of the STEM fields. But in terms of overall degrees and accomplishments, girls really are killing it.
And do you think that's a reflection that they're better supported in school or in environments where they feel they can achieve in that way? Because some folks will say, by race or gender, that there's a lot of pressure to overachieve, and they will achieve at a very high level because they sort of have to overcome other factors.
I think that's fair. I think also that there's a developmental aspect that just kind of puts girls maybe at an advantage in the learning environments that we create in schools are sometimes more conducive to girls' style than to boys. And I think looking at the opportunity gap too, there's clearly a divide, not as much by gender as there is by income status and ethnicity, but it really is the boys of the, within the opportunity gap statistics, the boys have really fallen the farthest behind, and I think that that's a piece that really needs particular attention right now.
Especially in a state like
schools.
California, where we're so diverse, and we have a very diverse student population, I think.
And we have to figure out better ways to reach every student and to find where kids are not succeeding. What are the supports and the scaffolding and the structures that we are still missing that are allowing us to perpetuate this gap for decades at this point.
I agree with you. There's so much potential there, and every kid deserves to have that attention. I don't want to miss your California story, because you've spoken about Pittsburgh and New York, and everybody has a story about how we got to California.
I finished college at Barnard, and I was working as a paralegal at Skadden in New York, and I had been thinking about going to law school. I actually had the Stanford Law School application in my desk, and I would pull it out and look at it and put it away.
Shut the door shut.
Close the door. I wasn't really sure where Palo Alto was, which is also how I thought it was pronounced. California to me was hippies in the north and movie stars in the south.
We can hope for.
Right. So I didn't do it. I didn't apply. It felt too exotic. I went to Columbia for law school. Knew the neighborhood,
Again,
was very familiar, was staying in New York. And I met a nice boy from Willow Glen in law school.
Okay.
And Steve was pretty clear very quickly that he was coming back to San Jose. And he actually did a great job not only selling himself, which was obviously successful, but in really promoting San Jose. He described this as a community where you could walk in and didn't matter if you hadn't been here for 4 generations. It didn't matter particularly what your bank account statement was. You could say, I want to be involved, and people would welcome you. And we moved here right after I graduated in 1991, and that was precisely true. We immediately got involved politically, supporting a number of Democratic candidates. When we moved here, my in-laws were both on the Central Committee, and very active, and he was exactly right. Whether it was cultural institutions or politics or neighborhood associations, this was a city that really welcomed activism and engagement. And
a pretty exciting time since 1991 to the present day in terms of San Jose and the area and what's happened here.
Yes, it has obviously it has grown tremendously. There are tremendous, wonderful assets about the city. There are still frustrations that I have. I feel that we are constantly on the verge of greatness, and I really just need us to
push over the verge,
get over that hump.
Fabulous. Well, good. It's been so great to speak with you about these matters, and we'll take a short break. And when we come back, we'll speak about your life as a elected public servant and your campaign.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jerry McNerney. I'm the newest elected member of the United States Congress from Northern California. I represent the 11th Congressional District. I got involved in politics because my son encouraged me to do so. I'd never thought about doing that before in my life. And here I am now in Congress helping to change the direction of our country. If you would like to get involved in your country, we need you, we need your help, the community needs you. Please contact your local Democratic Party at 408-445-9500 and help make a difference. Thank you.
So we're back with Susan Ellenberg, who's a trustee in the San Jose Unified School District and a candidate for Santa Clara County Supervisor District number 4. So Susan, in this segment, we'd like to speak a little bit more about your public life. And I'd like to ask first, I know you're a current trustee on the San Jose Unified School Board. Where did your interest in being on the school board come from?
Like so many people, there was an issue that I was concerned about and decided to step in. But the The slight background to that was that I had been teaching social justice to middle school students for 6 years, which is largely about civic engagement, helping kids understand issues of social urgency and figure out how they want to engage for a greater good. And one of those means of engagement, of course, is political advocacy. When my youngest daughter was a freshman at Lincoln High School, I very quickly heard about a policy that the board was proposing to reduce the number of credits required to graduate. I felt that wasn't a good idea. I made it my business to learn why it was proposed, wasn't satisfied, and at some point decided that, really reflecting what I was teaching, that I needed to step in as well. Here was an issue where I could have impact by running for elected office. So I ran for school board in 2014 with a lot of help from my students, I must say. It was an exciting race. We beat a 22-year incumbent by about 3-1.
Wow, 22 years.
And it has essentially started a third career for me following law and education. And what I'm finding on the school board is that we are able to do some really terrific things for kids and in supportive teachers. Since I've joined the board, we have passed a family leave policy for our employees that is one of the most progressive in the state and is now becoming a model for other school districts. We made the decision 2 years ago to fund SAT exams for all high school juniors, so we've eliminated the barriers of the cost of the exam and the scheduling, competing with work on Saturday mornings or transportation issues by offering the exam during school.
Wonderful.
And that, of course, has more than tripled the number of students that are taking that exam, making more kids eligible for college.
Wonderful. Tell us a little bit about the district, because there are a number of districts in San Jose.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are 19 school districts in San Jose, 31 across the county. San Jose Unified is the largest. We've got about 30,000 students across 41 schools, and our students represent all of the diversity and demographic of San Jose.
Wonderful. And the Unified School District, it's a large district, right? It has sort of a special status, does it not?
Unified means K through 12.
I see.
So it gives us the opportunity to really provide a consistent
policy for the whole spectrum.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Good. And what are the strengths in the community and the district that support the work of the school districts, and what are the challenges? What are the things that have been kind of hard and the board has really had to address?
It's the external challenges that are beyond curriculum and beyond class size. And in fact, in so many ways, a school district, a large urban school district, is really a microcosm of the county. We obviously provide education as our core service, but we are also serving 17,000 meals a day. We are providing transportation for tens of thousands of students. We connect kids to resources for immigration services, for behavioral and physical health services. We engage with 5 collective bargaining units. Our budget is about $300 million, which I think is about 6 times the size of the budget of the city of Campbell.
Wow.
It's a significant operation, and it incorporates all of the vulnerabilities that we see reflected in the larger population.
People sometimes forget that in a school district that large, especially an urban school district, the population of children, of course, are experiencing in their lives outside of school the range of challenges that people do face. And I imagine that housing and the cost of housing and homelessness might be issues that you would encounter.
So they absolutely are. And in fact, what I've seen is that we talked a little bit earlier about the opportunity gap and kids that are perennially struggling, not catching up to their peers. What's been so clear to me is that the primary issues that are impeding kids' success, again, are not internal to the schools. They are unstable housing, inadequate nutrition, inconsistent medical care, not having had access to early childhood education opportunities or engagement with the justice system or child welfare, foster care. I can't touch any of those as a school board member.
Interesting.
Those are all levers that are at the county, and it's actually seeing that distinction that interested me in running for the county seat, because I think that's a place to be even more impactful by working at a systems level to address exactly the issues that you're talking about. The root causes of homelessness. We have over 300 kids who are homeless or unstably housed in our district. We have thousands more who are living month to month, hoping not to get evicted. And if we can address at the county level these root causes of homelessness, affordable housing across a range of incomes, protect access to health care in this county, regardless of what happens at the federal level, and expand opportunities for early childhood education and care, I think we can do a tremendous amount, not only to stabilize families, but to ultimately see, almost as a byproduct, that kids will do better in school.
Wonderful, and I think I agree with you. Residents, even people who are engaged in the community, don't always realize the scope of the county's role as a social service provider.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what, along the lines that you mentioned, what interests you? What opportunities do you see there in terms of addressing the issues you mentioned?
Thanks. In fact, I start when I do meet and greets for my campaign. I always start with an overview of county government.
What the county even is.
Right, and
yes.
what county government does. And people are generally astounded. I have no idea that the county has a $6.5 billion budget. And the primary roles of county government are really support of vulnerable populations. I will sometimes distinguish city and county governments to people by thinking about infrastructure versus humans. And the primary responsibilities for the public health system, for Valley Medical and the 15 clinics in the public health department, public safety. The county is responsible ultimately for the operation of the jails and the conduct of the criminal justice system. And all of the health and human services, from women with infants and children to senior care nutrition. If you're doing well, if you're well-resourced and living a stable life, you may go through your entire life without being aware of the extent of county services. But if you need them, it's the safety net.
And I imagine some folks use them and don't even realize, and many go to Valley Medical Center for care and may not realize that's part of a healthcare system that's run by the county.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. There are a number of candidates in your race, and if you had to sum it up in 2 or 3 or 4 bullet points, what would you say are the characteristics that distinguish you from the other candidates as being the best qualified or the best person to be chosen by voters for this job?
Sure. I certainly think that my background in law and education provide me with an excellent foundation for doing this work. Working in a large urban school district has given me tremendous insight into the issues of vulnerability in our community. So essentially, I'm already engaged in this work, and I'm looking for a broader platform. Another one of my current roles is that I sit on the Santa Clara County Commission for the Status of Women. And one of my duties in that role is that I serve as a jail monitor at Elmwood in the women's correctional facility once a month. And having the opportunity to talk with women there, to learn more about, I'm not in there to address specific individual concerns, but to really look at the system. Are our programs, are the policies that are supposed to be in effect actually happening for the women? How are we doing in terms of reentry services? And one of the pieces that really strikes me is that looking again at a difference maybe between city and county, city government officials often have their advocates coming to them, constituents coming and making their issues known. With the vulnerable populations in the county, I think it's essential that we are going to them. The women that are in Elmwood, even when they're out, are unlikely to approach their county supervisor.
Or even know that would be the right place to go.
But by being in the community, in the places where vulnerable populations are, and asking questions and listening, I think is a really important piece, and that's a focus of mine.
Taking Elmwood as an example, have you observed anything there or learned anything there that struck you as an opportunity that was being missed or is currently being missed, that the county could do more to connect people to a better or different life?
Absolutely. Both within the system and coming out of it. One of the things that our commission has been working on is a gendered lens for identifying and classifying women as they come into the system. women end up in the justice system often for different reasons than men. The crimes are different, the motivations are different. And by talking about gender neutrality, we're really talking about a system that was designed to identify issues that were relevant to men and then apply them to women. So one piece is to implement a gendered lens for women in the system. Another is that we have to do a better job with reentry. If we want to reduce recidivism for both men and women, we have to make sure that when they come out of incarceration, they are prepared with skills to be able to work, that they have the opportunity to work, that they can get into housing. If they are families, that they can get their children back. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of work to be done in that area. And it's one that interests me deeply.
Thank you. What are the most urgent issues you see for the county to address? I think obviously the question of funding will be a challenge given changes at the federal level in taxation. But are there priorities that you have in mind, things that urgently need to be addressed or that are great opportunities that you'd really like to see the county commit to?
Homelessness, housing, housing, housing.
Yes.
I think that is not only the moral imperative of our day, I think it also will define our social and economic future. And I really believe that if it's not at the top of every candidate's list, somebody's not paying attention. So starting with housing, absolutely. And you mentioned the tax reforms, and also the Affordable Care Act is still, its future is still far from certain.
Right.
And if we are going to look at a significant reduction in the amount of funds that we are getting from the federal government, particularly with regard to health care, that's going to require some really significant reallocating of further limited dollars locally in this county. And I want to be at the table when those decisions are made. I will speak for really our core services and vulnerable populations. What do we need to do to make sure that people remain taken care of?
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your answers to all of the questions I've had for you today and for sharing so much about yourself and your experience as an elected official and your candidacy as for the county supervisors.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, Bill.
Thank you for watching DTV. Give us a call at 408-445-9500 or visit our website at www.sccdp.org. Help us to make a difference. We'll see you on the campaign trail.